Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to do a Perfumers portfolio double header. So we've got two noses, and if you are familiar with the setup of this episode, basically the idea is to highlight fragrances from my collection from a specific perfumer. And I've done many of the big names. I have a playlist on my channel. You can click and go sort and watch these videos by the playlist that show the perfumer. You can just watch them back to back if you'd like. But many of the big names I've already done. And so what I'm doing with some of the names that maybe aren't as well known, I won't say, the smaller or lesser names, because some of these creations are absolutely stunning. But I will say maybe some of the lesser known names outside of the industry. The people I'm going to name today for real frag heads like us, like me and many of the people who watch this channel, are going to be household names. But maybe for the average person, they'll have no clue who the people behind the actual perfume is. And so there's two perfumers we're going to highlight today, Yann Vasnier and Olivier Giacobetti. So as you can see, still big names in the industry, but they have not made my perfumers portfolio list, and now they have. And so there are 3 fragrances in my collection from each. If my voice is a little bit hoarse today, it's because it was football Sunday in America, and I am a Raider fan, and we were up by 20 at the half, and ended up losing the game. And so I'm sick to my stomach, partly. But, sometimes when you're a fan of a team, you expect some losses and some give and takes. The problem with being a Raider fan is that for the last couple decades, it's been nothing but losses. It's like you have to be a glutton for punishment, which is kind of what it turned into. But I do continue the suffering, and so hopefully one day it will turn around. But if my voice is hoarse, that is why. And if you're a fan of an opposing team, you can point and laugh and make fun of all the suffering that we've had over the years. But anyways, let's get started on Scent of the Day. And Scent of the Day is a new decant that I got from a friend. He gave me a very good price because I didn't want to buy a full bottle because it's very expensive. And, I don't think that these perfumes are worth full bottles. I don't want to give the brand the money for the full bottle, to be honest with you. And you can't find them on the secondary market. They're obviously very picky about, making sure that their stock is kept tight. Chanel does a very good job of this as well, making sure you can't go buy bottles discounted somewhere else. And this brand has, even though they are, they're not new in the perfume game, because they do have fragrances from the 50s and stuff like that, but most of their products are newer, let's say. And it's the House of Louis Vuitton, and it's called Ombre Nomade. So this was my scent of the day. It's September the 18th. So in most parts of the world, it's at least, in the northern hemisphere, it's starting to get that fall weather. In Texas, it's still in the 90s today, so it's still hot, but I don't care. I'm ready to wear the darker scents. And this is a woody, smoky scent with basically oud, benzoin, frankincense, and raspberry. Those are the 4 main notes listed. But what's interesting about this, and I'm glad I only got a 10 ml decant, because while I do like it and I see why it's the most popular Louis Vuitton scent, it doesn't do enough for me in this DNA, if that makes sense, because there are many other Middle Eastern styles with oud and raspberry. And in fact, Jacques Cavalier, who's the in-house perfumer, did a fantastic job making raspberry popular, if you will, in the fragrance world in 2007 with this little gem. He did Tuscan Leather, and this is a leather raspberry with, dirty cigarette vibe, if you will. And I absolutely love it. I think this is one of his masterpieces and one of my favorite leather scents. It made my top 50 leather countdown I did. Go watch that if you haven't, if you're interested in my taste in leather fragrances. And this also has a leathery dry down to it, which you would think I would love, and I do like that aspect to it. I also like that it's very dry. There is a touch of sweetness to it. That's expected in these more, this is almost, even though it's very niche pricing, these are like almost $400 for a bottle. Very expensive. That's why I say I won't give Louis Vuitton that kind of money for it, because I don't think it's worth it. But I will say I do like that it goes very dry and leathery ultimately. And I have enjoyed it. I like it. I don't love it. And the reason I say that is that that raspberry Middle Eastern combo has been done better in other places. Plus, I have many of the other examples in my collection. For example, Frederic Mall's The Moon, right? Julian Rasquinet did that, and that has this beautiful raspberry, lychee, you know, frankincense, Middle Eastern combo, oud, all this stuff, and I think it does it better than Ombre Nomade. And Roja has the exclusive parfum, which is discontinued, but I have a good sized decant of that. There are some Spirit of Dubai fragrances, which have this leathery, you know, oud, raspberry thing going on. And, you know, for me, even something like Promise, it isn't raspberry, but it has that Middle Eastern vibe with apple. So it's the same kind of fruity oud combo. And I think the Frederic Malls just do it better. And even something like Dawn, same Frederic Mall, Desert Gem, or whatever you want to call it, that series. I don't have a full bottle, but I have a 10 ml decant. I think that's a better perfume. And so it's good. I enjoy Ombre Nomade. I'll do a full review on it one day, but I have 10 ml. I wore it to bed last night. I also wore Lagerfeld's KL for Women from '82, and that's the one that really blew me away. That one of the most amazing florally amber fragrances I've ever smelled in my life. And that is an absolute gem. It's a shame that's discontinued. So I wore it to bed, and I wore it today as my scent of the day. You can see I put a pretty good sized dent in this 10 ml decant. I've been testing it, wearing it, and I like it. I'll do a full review, but that's my scent of the day. Okay, so let's get on with the two perfumers. So let's start with Yann Vasnier first. He's a younger chap, by the way. I think he's in his 40s right now. I found an interview he did called 5 Minutes with Yann Vasnier, and it's from a, I think a magazine called New York Butterfly, if you're interested in maybe looking it up and checking out the whole thing. But I think he is currently a Givaudan perfumer, and he's from Brittany, France. Just some background on him. He did go to the prestigious PCA Perfumery School in Versailles, which is kind of where everyone wants to go. You know, they only accept like 3 or 4 students a year, something crazy, right? There are less perfumers on planet Earth than there are astronauts, right? So it's a very tough, very competitive school to get into. And he says he grew up in a family that's passionate about gardening and spends a lot of time taking care of things like roses and trees and other flowers. His brother studied botany and architecture, and they followed him through France and visits to Europe and went to go see famous gardens. And he said since age 13, he spent all his money on fragrances that he had, all his liquid, you know, idle cash, and buying new scents, especially Chanel. He said he was obsessed with Chanel and the crafts and Karl Lagerfeld, he mentioned in this interview, which is very interesting because Lagerfeld had to do more with the design side of things and the aesthetic of Chanel, but he didn't have anything to do with the fragrances. He's even said that multiple times, and yet Lagerfeld is such an integral part of Chanel because when you think of Chanel, you can't separate it from the fashion side, even though we care most about the perfume side. And so he says that they're asking about his creative process. He says, everything originates from the inspiration we receive from the client. It can be a story, images, music, colors, anything that will help us create the fragrance that represents their brand. After we speak about the inspiration, I go to my computer and create the first trials, combining and mixing different types of ingredients. Interesting, he says he goes to his computer first. I guess that's just, you know, that's just the way it is nowadays. Then these go through the lab and are compounded and put into alcohol. Next, I smell the first perfume samples with a person we call an evaluator. The evaluator specializes in specific brands and is very focused on the client and their tastes. Also an interesting little tidbit. And they kind of help the perfumer fine-tune the offering for what the client wants. And it says after we make our first proposal to the client, there's a lot of back and forth, and we work to improve the fragrance with each iteration. It is a very intense and competitive process. We are in competition both inside and outside the company. And some of that kind of got brought up in the Ghost Perfumer book. Fantastic book on the fragrance world. In the final stage, the final fragrances from all the houses are compared against each other, and usually there is a consumer testing that decides the winner. And the next question is, how do you find perfect scent to suit one person? He says he loves making fragrances for friends. It's a breath of fresh air to be liberated from the commercial considerations, which you have to remember, you know, these perfumers are almost like prisoners to the brand. As much as they would love to go out there and make something amazing and unique, they have to follow the brief, or else they won't have a job. And it says, I usually ask what fragrances they wear or have worn in the past to discover a pattern in their taste, talk about favorite foods, colors, places, music, etc. Once I have a picture in my mind, all that's left is to go get the amazing ingredients and distill this image into a perfect scent. If you could do a perfume for someone, who would it be? Anyone with an interesting story to tell. The Obamas, Catherine Deneuve, Rania of Jordan. I was born in Jordan. Peter Beard, the Schnabels, Kanye West, Karl Lagerfeld, who was alive back then. He's unfortunately not alive any longer. Rest in peace, Karl. I mean, what a fashion icon he was. It says, what does a city like New York bring to you? Lots of energy and so many opportunities to meet exceptional people. Working in New York City is so different than working in Paris. And it says, what's your favorite place in the city? The 18th floor at the Standard. And he mentions a couple other places in New York. So that's just a little bit about Yann Vasnier. So let's go through some of his fragrances in my collection. Again, there's 3. And one of those 3 is a fragrance from the house of Marc Jacobs. And unfortunately, this fragrance is discontinued. It came out in 2010. And he worked with the great Anne Gottlieb on this perfume, who's one of like the classic, one of the most famous product developers in the industry. She's kind of a master in trends. And this fragrance is the only Marc Jacobs I have in my collection. It is discontinued and very hard to find, but it's probably one of the better peppery designer fragrances. There is a niche Amouage pepper fragrance that I think I prefer a little bit more, called Honor Man, but they kind of play in the same sandbox, and they were also released in a similar time, which just goes to show trends and how it affects what comes out. This came out in 2010, and it's called Marc Jacobs Bang, and this bottle actually won the Bottle of the Year because of the presentation. It looks like someone literally punched the bottle. Cool idea. I like it. You know, but keep in mind, this is a designer. This is not some, you know, off-the-wall Beaufort London niche. It is a designer. It smells like a designer. If you pay big money for this because it's discontinued, I think you'll probably be disappointed. I don't think it's worth big money, but is it worth double what it sold for at retail? Probably, because for a designer, this is a very good designer. You know, if it was $30, if you can find this, what is this? This is a 30 ml bottle. If you can find something like this for 50, 60 bucks, go for it. But once you start getting into the hundreds, it's not worth it. Because this is basically a pepper, lots of different types of pepper in here, actually. Great, probably one of the best pepper fragrances, along with Honor Man, in my opinion. Pink pepper, black pepper, and white pepper are highlighted here, with benzoin, LME, and this woody touch, which probably comes from some Isoe Super, just from what I detect, and probably some vetiver, which can sometimes come across as smelling rooty or woody. And there's also some patchouli in here, and white moss, which white moss is a very strange note. Probably some sort of synthetic, synthetic replacement for oak moss is my guess. But it is a, what's interesting is it has this pepper LME combo, which is the same main combo that Amouage Honor Man has. And Amouage Honor Man, I think, came out the exact same year. Let me just see, since we're on the subject. Honor Man, 2011. Actually, interestingly enough, this came first, and then Honor came out in 2011. Honor has both red and black pepper with LME. And they add some other things like frankincense and nutmeg and tonka, but the construction is very, very similar. And sometimes that happens, you know, sometimes you find a fragrance that really goes into a very interesting category, and then you'll find another fragrance like a niche house that takes that DNA and maybe tries to take it to the next level, which I think Amouage did with Honor Man, in my opinion. So, very good example of a peppery scent. The problem is, to me, there are some notes that I just won't pay big money for. You know what I mean? Like, there are some I absolutely love, oud and incense and leather. But once you start getting into something like pepper, or for me, like citrus heavy fragrances, those are two categories that I would say don't move me enough to go pull out my wallet. You know what I mean? Especially when you start talking discontinued, big money fragrances, which this does go for big money now and again. You will find it discounted at you know, I think I got this from Maximum Fragrance, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. And it could have been like fragrancebuy.ca or something, because sometimes they'll get discontinued fragrances too. But keep an eye out. If you see it for a good price, I would say it might be worth a grab. So that's the first Yann Vasnier, and it came out in 2010. And then jumping to 2016, again, I only have 3 from each house. And so jumping to 2016 is a Tom Ford, and he did a couple things for Tom Ford, which I don't have and I've never smelled. He did Santal Blush, he did Vanille Fatale, he did London, which I still haven't smelled. That's one I'd love to smell one day. He did the Parfum versions of Costa Azura and Black Orchid. He did Velvet Orchid Eau de Parfum. He did Plum Japonais. So he's done a lot for the brand of Tom Ford. And he did Vert de Fleur, which I actually did not like that one. He did Neroli Portofino Forte. So he's done a lot for the brand of Tom Ford. Lavender Palm, never smelled it. And this is the one that I'm really smitten with, though. And this is the one that I think really deserves the title of Tom Ford Private Blend. They kind of went into some weird, crazy places lately. I think the brand is really in trouble. From a fragrance enthusiast point of view, forget about what sales are doing. But from a fragrance enthusiast point of view, I think the brand of Tom Ford is in high water. I think they're in big trouble. But this came out in 2016, and this was a trio of perfumers: Yann Vasnier, Antoine Maisondieu, and Shayamala Maisondieu, who were husband and wife team. I think they're since divorced, unfortunately, but I think they were married when they created this. It's a green resinous scent called Vert d'Encens. And Rich Mitch brings up something very interesting about this fragrance. We talked about it a little bit on our last live stream, Ram Duck Productions 3. If you go down, just go down either to the live streams or just look through my videos and you'll see it. And he mentions that this is a very oily scent. And I know what he means, because to me, I get a lot of resins. And those resins can come across as smelling oily on the skin. But it's got this amazing frankincense and I think sap, this tree sap-like feel. You know, so it's got this frankincense with, you know, very traditional masculine lavender and balsam fir and basil, that kind of thing. It's a very traditional masculine-like smell with a lot of frankincense. But what they did is they took this heliotrope, and the heliotrope gives it this, you know, it gives it this texture. Heliotrope always does this. It gives it this texture, almost like if you take a mattress and you squish it together, one of those memory foam mattresses, and it pops back. That's kind of the texture heliotrope gives. And it's here. And so that texture with the spices and all the other stuff, the resins, the oiliness, the frankincense, the I don't know if there's pine, but there is this pine resinous vibe, you know, that mixes with the tree sap. And I think it's one of the best private blends. I'm so glad I found this bottle, because unfortunately it is discontinued. Sadly discontinued, because I think this is one of the best Tom Ford private blends. Definitely the best from the Vert series. They did, I mentioned Vert de Fleur, whatever the heck the other one was. And I've smelled all 3, and I think this is the best. The only one that's full bottle worthy for me. Okay, next, we're going to go to the house of Moschino. And this is 2019. This is the newest bottle in my collection from Yann Vasnier. And he did this one solo, just like he did Marc Jacobs Bang solo. And this is marketed by Euro Italia. Again, it's the house of Moschino. And it's called Toyboy. So Toyboy comes in the most probably divisive and off-putting bottle. Many people won't buy this because of the bottle, which is a shame. You know, it's got this, it reminds me of the Honey Bear. There's this honey brand that sells their honey in a bear bottle like this. And this always reminds me of that bear. But I like the bottle because I think it's unique. Is it a marketing scheme? Yes, absolutely. But don't let the bottle put you off from trying the scent, because the scent inside is a good designer scent, which is something we don't get very often nowadays. It came out in 2019, but it is a floral, rose-heavy, rose-focused scent. So it's rose with magnolia and flax blossom. And what's interesting about this is it uses a very similar pink pepper elemi combo that he kind of perfected in Marc Jacobs Bang. So you get a little bit of that peppery, you know, elemi. Elemi gives this frankincense-like vibe, but almost like you're smelling a lemony frankincense, you know, a fresher, lemony frankincense. And it's got Indonesian nutmeg, and it's got clove, so it has spices as well. And it has pear. So it has this little bit of fruit, a little bit of spice, a little bit of resins, but the rose is a big part of this fragrance. And it does have a vetiver, a Haitian vetiver dry down, which also was the dry down in Marc Jacobs Bang. So I think there's some progression. You know, he's been playing with the DNA that did so well here. Even though it got discontinued, it was a big hit for him. And kind of took it in another direction for Moschino. And there's a ton of Amber Max and a ton of other synthetics in here. It is a synthetic smelling fragrance, but it's very well done. And I'm glad I have this bottle. And the thing about this fragrance is it can be had for very cheap on discount, especially if you don't care if it says tester on the back like mine. Like I could care less about this. I want the juice inside. And so if you're willing to buy a tester, you can get this for a very good price. Price per mil on this is very good. And you know, most men, this is marketed towards men. It's completely unisex. But most men might smell this and think it's a little bit too feminine, because rose traditionally, especially in the West, has this feminine leaning vibe to it. But what's great about that is if you have the intestinal fortitude to wear this in public, you are going to stand out. Absolutely. While everyone else is wearing Sauvage and Bleu de Chanel and Eros, you know, and all this or that, you'll stand out with something like this. Absolutely. And it also lasts a really long time because of that synthetic nature to the fragrance. But at the same time, it does, even though the entire fragrance as a whole smells a bit synthetic, the little pieces here and there that you can pick out smell, they smell natural, if that makes sense. So the bits and pieces smell natural, but the overall feel of the fragrance does come across a little synthetic. Okay, so let's go to Olivier Giacobetti. She is the second perfumer, and I just found a little bit about her. She did an interview with a magazine called Nose, which I think is a magazine out of the UK. I know Papa Persolays writes for them, or you know, does stuff with them from time to time, but you know, he's big time in the fragrance world. And so this is an interview with Olivier Giacobetti. And it starts with, "What's your motto?" And she quotes Leonardo da Vinci. She says, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." Right? That's a great quote. "What is your first memory of perfume?" "Kiehl's Musk. When I was 6, my father brought it back. A small bottle from New York. I spent my childhood stealing droplets of the perfumed oil, which I found bewitching." Interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of Kiehl's Musk, by the way. "What are, according to you, the basics of creating a standout fragrance?" She responds, "A standout fragrance doesn't only depend on technique and aesthetics. It is the first and foremost a very potent idea that caters for an unconscious collective desire. Interesting, she says, unconscious. What are the major challenges that a perfumer faces? To stay true to oneself and to avoid copying from others too much, in case one forgets what makes one's own world so special and kills one's instinct and imagination. What ingredients do you enjoy working with the most and why? I like woods, all kinds of woods, whether dry, black, green, smooth, or burnt. There's something primordial about the scent of wood. I totally agree. I cannot formulate a fragrance without having a specific wood in mind. Wood makes everything more refined. It provides structure and mystery too. What is the make? Okay, so they talk a little bit about, I think, a brand that I'm not familiar with. Which of your scented creations do you consider the best? The ones to come, I don't really look back on what I've created because the only way of being truly creative is to keep an eye on the future. Good answer, by the way. However, it is rewarding to know that some of my fragrances have withstood the test of time, perhaps because they were free of trends. She's mentioned that trend word many a times in this interview. What is it that makes a fragrance like Splash Forte? Okay, so they're talking about, again, scents I've never smelled. Your creations are often light and airy. For example, En Passant and Splash Forte. Is this your hallmark? By the way, I haven't smelled En Passant, which I know is a sin, but hopefully I will soon. It isn't because it's not. It isn't. Okay, so they're asking her about her creations being often light and airy. Is this your trademark? It isn't, because it's not the case for all the perfumes I create. What dictates the volume and power of the fragrance is its theme. There is a tendency to want to up the volume, but what makes music isn't the noise, it's the melody. Nowadays, the general tendency is to favor loudness, no matter the lyrics. Perfumers use the same set of high diffusion molecules and everything ends up smelling the same. While some perfumes must be on the strong side to fully express their potential, others act like a veil, a second skin. White lilac, which is the central theme of the perfume En Passant, would become cloying at a higher concentration and would lose all of its naturalness and poetry. Very interesting response. And she goes on to be asked, your fragrances are often inspired by natural elements, fig trees, wet wood, white linen on a clothesline, so forth and so on. What landscapes are most evocative to you in your work? It's not so much natural landscapes as a specific moment and sensation, much like freeze frames. I like the idea of trying to capture a fleeting impression before it slips away. Reality merges with memory. I don't try to replicate specific scents, but rather our perception of them. What interests me is the sensation a scent brings. Very interesting. And then it says, you like perfumes that tell stories. What is your favorite olfactive story? I'm unable to create a perfume that doesn't have a personal and emotional dimension to it. I simply draw inspiration from what moves me. I don't have a favorite story. And she goes on to talk about this brand, iUnix. I'm not familiar with them because all of iUnix's themes draw from personal stories. And she says the aim was to convey enveloping sense of lightness, softness, and strange quietness. Okay, so anyways, interesting to get to know her a little bit. I have 3 fragrances from her, 2 from 1999 and 1 from 2005. Now, she did an eau de parfum version of the 2005 bottle I'm going to show you that came out in 2011, but as you can see, most of her work is older. I don't have anything new that she's put out. I think she's done some new stuff, but many of her works have been from the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s. Like, for example, she was very, her most popular fragrance is Philosophos for Diptyque, which I've never smelled. She did the Eau de Toilette in 96. She did the Eau de Parfum in 2012. Haven't smelled either. She did En Passant in 2000. Haven't smelled it. She did Tea for Two in 2000. Haven't smelled it. She did some stuff for L'artisan Parfumeur in the 90s. Premier Figuier, 94. Passage d'Enfer, 99. Stuff like that. So you can see her timeline, if you will. So the 3 we're going to talk about that are in my collection that I sprung for full bottles, and in fact, one I actually have a backup of, which is a very That just goes to show you how much I love a fragrance if I back it up. So the first one we're going to talk about is a Hermes, and it's probably one of the best iris fragrances out there, period. And this was put out in 1999, and it's called Hiris. Now, Hiris is a fragrance that is all about iris. It's almost an iris soliflor, although there's more going on than just iris. It's not just iris. So obviously iris is the main theme, and I think you get iris in all levels of the fragrance. It never goes away from iris playing a part, playing that floral, powdery, fuzzy, fluffy vibe that iris gives to a perfume. And I was mentioning this the other day when I did a video, a previous video. Iris was one of the Roman goddesses, if you want, from Roman mythology. And if you go back to Roman mythology, she was the messenger. She was the messenger goddess, and she would travel down from the heavens on a rainbow, and she would give the message of the gods, which is very interesting when you think about what iris does in a perfume, in the flower itself, because sometimes it really does act as that messenger note. It brings all the other notes to your nose. And here, iris is such a central part of the creation. You can't get away from it. But there are other things. There's touches of carnation, neroli, and rose. There's other flowers with coriander, and in the base you get this slight honey-like feel. And a little bit, I think, of vanilla and cedar. She mentioned using woods. I think there's some cedar base here. And it is just a perfect iris fragrance for me. I mean, if you want to smell posh, and you want to smell iris, and I've mentioned this before, but Russian Adam was kind enough to, send me some real ingredients to sniff. And one of the ingredients he sent to me was a very rare iris with irones at 80%. So usually the process for, getting iris from the ground, because it's not the actual flower. I think the flower in a violet flower is completely mute, right? I don't think there's any smell from the flower itself. I think it's all from the bulb. And so what they do is they let the bulb sit underground it takes a couple of years for it to come to full maturity. And then they carefully take it out. They kind of dust it off, and they do their thing. They, I don't know the full process, but turning it in from iris bulb to orris butter, if you will, takes another 2 to 3 years while it sits and macerates. And it's a very expensive process, and they're lucky if they get 15, 20, 25% irones. 80% irones is mind-blowing. It's one of the most, literally, of all the ingredients he sent me, I think I like the ouds the most because they really do appeal to me. But of all of the ingredients he sent me, the iris with the 80% irones is the only one that was so shockingly beautiful. I mean, it literally almost brought a tear to my eye just smelling the ingredient. And it's in that iris, not that particular iris, but that iris feel. You're not going to smell something as beautiful as that every day. That's just an absolute gift thanks to my friend Russian Adam. But that type of iris vibe is here. And this is one of the best iris takes. Now, I did get a sample of Iris Silver Mist, which is the other iris many people compare to. And that's from Serge Lutens. And I also got a sample of Latessa, which is from Mas Milano. And so I will do some early impressions on the decants that people were kind enough to send me. But I can tell you right now, they're going to have to really knock it out of the park to get a full bottle because this is so good. I think this is, many would consider her best creation. And, like I said, I haven't smelled En Passant. I'm not a big fig fan. It's not my favorite. I mean, I have a couple fig fragrances, but I probably wouldn't go hunt down Filosa Coast just because it's not my thing. But this is absolutely stunning. And, the older bottles with the blue, I think they look cool, but Hermes does such a good job of keeping most of the stuff that I've smelled from Hermes in its current form is good. And I think this is one of them. I think there are some differences. I think the original bottle with the blue is maybe a little bit more cold. I think that maybe this was warmed up. Maybe there's a little more amber in here or something. But all in all, I wouldn't go spend huge money on the vintage. If you find a great deal, absolutely grab either. I think Jean-Claude Elena reformulated this when he became in-house perfumer. And, you know, we all know he's got quite the nose. So anyways, that's Hiris. One of the best iris fragrance money can buy. I think just an iris, just a reference iris, if you will. And there is the image that Hermes chose on the back to represent Hiris, and it's perfect. But I think this also works great on a man, and I think this also works fantastic as a work scent. If you just want to smell posh, because it's such a heartbreakingly beautiful note, iris. So if you just want to smell posh at work, Hiris, no matter whether you're a man or a woman, I would say is absolutely stunning. Okay, next we're going to go to a L'Artisan Parfumeur creation, and she also did this in 1999. Unfortunately, this is discontinued. It's no longer available. And this is called Dzing, with the woman riding the tiger. And some people say this smells like a circus. And I kind of understand what they mean, but I don't think it smells like a circus. I think this smells like a interesting take on a Russian leather, like a niche take on a Russian leather. Like in 1999, imagine the L'Artisan Parfumeur folks saying, we want a modern, at that time, in 1999, a modern take on an old school leather scent. And they hit the mark, because this has that leather with some animalic touches here. There is Castoreum, there's Costus, both give off some animalic vibes, and that's where I think that you could say circus, you know, verbiage came from with the leather. And there's also a beautiful iris, and so she was using iris as a theme in 1999, as you can tell. And from the interview we mentioned, she talked about the woods. There's a cedar note. So there's actually a cedar note in both of these. So, and she mentioned how important woods were to her. And there's musk. There's what they call Tonkin musk in the base. What's interesting about this fragrance is there is a caramel note. Normally I don't like stuff like that in my perfume. But here, it's done so well. And the focus is really on the leathery, animalic iris. There's a touch of saffron, which seems out of place to me, but it all works somehow. It all works. There's ginger, a little freshness for the opening, but if you like, you know, old school Russian leather scents, I would urge you to try this. And even though there's no birch listed, I get a little bit of a smoky vibe from time to time when I wear this. I would say there's potentially a birch note or something that's adding maybe a little bit of a smoke element. Not even, it's hard to say, because don't think like black smoke. It doesn't have that. It just has, you know how birch and a Russian leather mixes with the leather to give off that specific Russian leather vibe? That's what I get from here. It really does feel like a take on a Russian leather, like they took Chanel's Cuir de Russie and tried to make it in a L'Artisan Parfumeur way. And I think they did a great job. I'm sad this is discontinued, because this is one of my favorite L'Artisan Parfumeur fragrances, but it is what it is. And the final one, unfortunately, is also discontinued in this concentration. You can still get the Eau de Parfum, but this concentration, unfortunately, is discontinued. And it's from the house of Luban, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I am a big fan of this fragrance, and I backed it up. And this one is called Idole de Lubin Eau de Toilette. So the Eau de Toilette came out in 2005, and look at this bottle presentation. Look at the detail of the cap. I love this bottle presentation. It's got the traditional shield on the back. Such detail, such beauty. And the new Idole de Lubin bottles here. This is what they look like. They look like this. So you can see that they kind of tried to keep the cap the same, if you will, but they took all the detail out. So I mean, look at the difference. So this is all about cost saving. I love this bottle, and Idole de Lubin, I'm sure she was very proud of, because it sticks to her woody, her love of using woods. She used an ebony wood, and she used a red sandalwood and what's called cottonwood. And what's interesting about this fragrance is the use of rum. So she used this rum, again, saffron combo, which seems very strange and out of place again. And she did the same thing in Dzing. The saffron in Dzing seems strange, like it shouldn't be there. Same thing with Idole de Lubin. There's this bitter orange rum combo with black caraway, and then this out of the blue saffron appears. And normally I don't like sweet fragrances. There's a literal sugar cane note in here. But when it's mixed with rum, it fits, you know, it doesn't seem out of place. It fits the story, like she was saying in the interview. And then the base is leather. And so again, she used a beautiful leather note in Dzing, and she used a beautiful leather note here to complement the rum. This is a boozy, spicy, woody fragrance is how I would describe it, with a little bit of sweetness, but it's done very well. It's not done in the modern, disgusting sweetness way where many of the, you know, masculines smell just like bubble gum or pralines or something crazy like that. No, the sweetness here is proper. You know, it really feels like you're with the theme, right? You're on a beach, enjoying your rum. Maybe they're having some sort of a party. You know, that vibe it gives me that vibe, like they're roasting a pig in Hawaii or something, and they're doing like a hula dance, and you're on the beach at the party with your lei over your head, and that vibe. You've got a glass of rum in your hand, and you're just taking it all in. And this fragrance feels like that, but I love wearing it in the fall. When it's not too cold, it just fits perfectly in this time of year. Like from now until November in Texas is the perfect time to wear this. If you like stuff like, if you like boozy fragrances, if you like Bentley for Men Intense, or if you like Roja's Creation E, Enigma, whichever part of the world you're from, depends on which name you're getting with Roja, with the Roja. If you can find the EDT, I would urge you to try the EDT. I do have a small sample of the eau de parfum. So one day, once I get my courage up, I will do a comparison video. Those comparison videos are tough for me because I really have to focus, and I really have to, you know, have the time to be able to go back and forth and compare. And especially when I have a small sample, it's a one-time shot and that's that. But I will do a comparison video between the EDT and the EDP one day. This is a different fragrance. This is Upper 10, which I'll also talk about one day. I do like this. So there you have it. 3 from Yann Vasnier, 3 from Olivier Giacobetti. So that concludes this Perfumers portfolio video. Hope you enjoy these episodes. If you have fragrances from either perfumer you know and love, I'd love to hear your thoughts, what your favorites are, or even from my list, what your favorites are. I love seeing your faces in the comments. I love the support you guys give me. The community is absolutely amazing. It's such an honor to do this and be a part of this with you guys. And so I really do appreciate the support. And it feels like, you know, it really does feel like we're creating a community, a family here. That's why I say I love seeing your faces in the comments and reading what you have, your thoughts, and many times I learn more from the comments than you guys do from me. So hope you appreciate these videos. The likes and subscriptions and all that stuff are always greatly appreciated. Cheers. Have a good evening. Bye, guys.